In 2012, two families left the city. They left most of their worldly possessions behind, along with the conveniences of modern American living. It's today that these two families have relocated themselves in the mountains of the American Ozarks to build for themselves a more sustainable and fulfilling lifestyle.
We are an American Homestead!
This week on An American Homestead, we take a first-hand look at pressure canning over an outdoor wood fire. The harvest is coming in, and we need to put up as much produce as possible without spending an arm and a leg on propane to do it. Plus, we take a look at some of the garden all-stars this year. Thanks for watching, and be sure to visit us online at anamericanhomestead.com. It's harvest time here on the homestead, and everything is coming in. We have squash out the ears, we have pickles, we have our tomatoes that are coming in soon, and we are getting ready to harvest a lot. We've been harvesting a lot of food, and others have as well, and giving us some of their produce. And so we're taking all of this and we're canning it and putting it up for our later use. This is how we're going to provide for ourselves down the road.
So this past week was the first time we've done outdoor canning, and we got a fire going, and we did 2 days that we did wood fire canning, and none of us have ever done this before, but we gave it our best try, and I think both days are pretty successful. We learned a lot the first day, and the second day went a lot better, but we put up a lot of produce in those 2 days in our pressure canner, our all-American pressure canner that is huge. It holds 19 quart jars. It weighs 25 pounds when it's empty. When it's full, it's 100 pounds. And you're not supposed to move it when it's full. It would take 2 people, but you don't want to move it when it's full. When my family lived in this city, I did some water bath canning, but I've never done pressure canning before. Water bath canning, we did pickles, I've made jam before. When I lived in the city, I did a lot of fermented food preservation, things like sauerkraut. I made salsa that way. I fermented ginger carrots, if you're familiar with the Weston A. Price Foundation, the Nourishing Traditions cookbook. A lot of recipes for fermented food, so I did a number of those. I've done dill pickles in a water bath canner, and I've made a lot of jam before, but I've never done pressure canning. This was my first time, and we decided to do it over a wood fire, which none of us had ever done before, but it turned out well. We actually got some good green beans, and we pulled out our green beans and they looked great. And all the lids popped, and so we were very pleased with our hard day of work for that. My husband did the fire and helped with some of the canning and the heavy lifting, and my mom was pumping a lot of water, and my oldest son was running around doing errands, and my little son, who loves Grandpa, was basically babysat by Grandpa. So we all had our job to do, and it was great that we all did it together. So when we opened that jar of produce and that jar of green beans, we can say that we all participated in putting up that produce.
This last spring we got some cinder blocks, so we made a brick, not so much an oven, but a rotisserie, where we roasted a lamb on that and used a T-post to tie the lamb to. From there, we decided to make it a little bit better, and we put some rebar in the corners to make it a little more permanent, and filled it with rock to hold the heat a little bit better. We salvaged a metal grate, two metal grates from a salvage yard, and we were able to cut those to width to fit on the 2 fire pits. We made one larger so we can roast a large animal in, and it's a little higher above the flame, and then the other side is much smaller and it's closer to fire, to where when we need a greater heat we can put that pot on that grate. It seems to be really working so far pretty good.
jars out of there? How many jars are in there?
The last one?
Last one. All done. We decided to do our canning outside over a wood fire for a few reasons. Not many people do this today, although in years past that was the primary way of canning from what I understand. We found someone online that was really encouraging to us to get going. Someone had done over 1,000 jars of food in their all-American canner, the same one that we have, and he had done it over a wood fire. And this was really encouraging to us because we knew it was possible. So we just decided to go ahead and try, and we knew that we would have a learning curve, but we were excited to get going. We didn't want to do it inside. The primary reason being the expense of propane. Electric stove is a lot cheaper to operate than a propane stove, and we felt that by using propane we would negate any savings that we would have had in putting up our own produce. We might as well just go to the store and buy a can of green beans versus doing all of the work and the expense of putting up our own green beans if we did it on a propane stove. So we decided to do it over a wood fire.
One of the biggest concerns that we had heard about pressure canning over a wood fire was that how do you keep a constant temperature under your pressure canner? Pressure canner has to be kept at exactly the right amount of pressure the entire time. And so it can be kind of tricky to make sure you keep that temperature exactly where you want it. We looked online and found a number of people who have been doing this and looked over some of their suggestions. One of the suggestions that I thought was great was being able to take a piece of sheet metal and put that over the fire. Once you've reached pressure, once you've reached the appropriate amount of pressure in your canner, put the sheet metal over the fire and allow it to basically partly cover the fire. And eventually that sheet metal is also going to heat up. And so what you do at that point is pour water over that sheet metal and allow it to boil and steam up, and it cools off the sheet metal and cools off the fire a little bit, but that sheet metal prevents the fire from being put out by the water. And so it's a great way of regulating your temperature, and it worked out perfectly. I couldn't have imagined a better way to make the temperature regulated just so the pressure was perfect. The pressure stayed at 15 pounds the entire time that it needed to, and it worked great. And so this is always something that people were concerned about, because if your pressure gets too low, you have to start over your time. And if you cook too long, if you have to start over too many times, you only have so much water that's boiling inside that pressure canner, and if all of that water escapes through steam, you can ruin your pressure canner. So it's very important to make sure that the temperature stays constant over a wood fire. And a wood fire is just a lot more tricky than it is cooking something on a stove, where you can regulate the temperature just with a turn of a dial.
Since we moved to our homestead, we've really tried to practice eating seasonally. And what I mean by that is that we'll pick it raw and eat it that day, we'll cook it and eat it that day, or if we have a whole bunch that we pick at one time, we want to preserve it. So that means either drying it, fermenting it, or canning it. And what we've done this week is a lot of canning. So if you're interested in learning more about our wood fire canning experience, you can go to our website at AmericanHomestead.com and find the article 10 Tips for Canning Over a Wood Fire. It has a lot of lessons that we learned and a lot of tips for being able to do this yourself if you're interested.
So what I thought we'd do is show you our garden all-stars, to be able to share with you what's growing best in our garden. So we're going to take a tour around the garden and show you a few things. We're going to do this every so often to show you what's growing the best, what's performing the best, and maybe then you can go ahead and research it and maybe grow those same things yourself. This is our Arkansas Traveler tomato plant. It's producing lots of tomatoes all over the place. It's an heirloom variety we got from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds Company, and it's performing very well. It's almost as tall as I am. Many of the plants that I'm growing here are heirloom tomatoes. I have a few hybrid varieties, but for the most part, they're all heirloom, non-GMO seeds, coming from seeds. And this plant, like most of the others in the garden, was started from seed. And then we've transplanted them out here inside the garden. And this has just grown tremendously well. It looks very healthy, very vibrant, and it's got lots of fruit on it. If you just come and look around here, I'll show you. Look at the cluster of these tomatoes on here. And they're just deep, all within that. Look how big those tomatoes are. And it's just thick. The more you go inside the plant, they're just thick. And what I've been doing is making sure to cut off most of the suckers off the plant and just allow them to just allow the plant all of the nutrients and energy it needs to put those into the current crop of tomatoes that are on the plant. And it's going tremendously well. This one here too got blew over in a storm a little bit just the other day, but again, just lots of tomatoes all over the plant. The tomatoes are just growing magnificently. And here's another one. This is also one. These are all Arkansas Travelers. And this one here, again, just loaded with tomatoes all over the plant. And so here's our tomato crop, basically. We're going to get hundreds of tomatoes. We're going to can most of this stuff, and we love salsa here, so it's all going to go into salsa. So here's our crop of sunflowers. We have a lot of sunflowers planted, and there's really two varieties. I got this from a friend in town who gave us these seeds, and I really wanted to plant these for actually two reasons. One of the reasons was because I love sunflower seeds, and the other reason was we needed food for our chickens. We have chickens here, and each of these flower heads will be able to be broken down and the seeds extracted and be given for feed for our chickens. It's just a free, easy way to grow some food, some good protein for your chickens. And so sunflowers are absolutely healthy. And so all of these small ones here you see that are just about my height, these are a smaller variety of sunflower seeds, and these are going to be the ones that grow out for the chickens. The larger ones you see, some of them haven't even bloomed yet. Some of these larger ones are going to be used for me. I'm going to consume them. I love sunflower seeds. I'm a big fan. And there's a lot of good tutorials online, and we'll do one even on our website of how to extract sunflower seeds from the sunflower and then use them, roast them, and salt them for your own consumption. So the last all-star in this episode is the achicha cucumber. It goes by a bunch of different names. Sometimes it's called the Bolivian cucumber or the fat baby cucumber. It's an amazing looking cucumber. And so I got these seeds actually from another blogger who lived in the UK. I was trying to find these seeds everywhere after it was mentioned on John Kohler's website at growingyourgreens.com. He did a video on this cucumber, and I was bound and determined to find the seeds somewhere for this cucumber. I looked all over the web, far and wide, and I could not find them. Finally, I found a blogger in the UK who was graciously able to send me some seeds, and they said they were from 2011, but actually they had about 95% germination rate, which is unbelievable. And so we grew these all over this arbor that you see, and these are just growing magnificently. And we're getting ready to do a harvest on these. I was wrong. I thought that these would actually have a late harvest sometime, maybe close to the late of summer, but it's really only the end of July, and they are just going nuts with all kinds of large and small achichas all over these vines, multiple vines all over the arbor. And so I am very excited. We're going to can these. I'm going to actually barbecue some of them on the grill with some marinated in some Italian dressing over the weekend. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But let me give you a closer look at this amazing fruit. And so if you look at the small ones, this is kind of a small one. Actually, it's about medium size. But if this little guy here, it's got lots of water. If you can see, it's dripping with water. These things are just laden with water, if you can see that drop on there. But it's got a little water drop there. And it's just dripping with water. If you take a bite out of it, it's just packed with water. And it tastes like a cucumber in my opinion. I think it sort of tastes like a cucumber and maybe a cross between a pepper. And it's just great. And so I love these. And if you look at some of the older, more mature ones that I'll save the seeds out of when we harvest these, if you pull it apart, it kind of explodes open and it kind of gives you the seeds. So you can see the seeds right there. They're kind of like these arrowhead shaped thingies. Kind of interesting shapes, and they're black. And then you can take the seeds out, save those. We're going to sell these on our website at some point for you to purchase. And then I'm going to take the flesh of the cucumber and then marinate that. And then you can use them you can pickle them, or you can grill them. I'm going to grill some of them, and I'm going to pickle some. And they're just, these older, more mature ones are still delicious and still laden with water. And really moist. Really good. So I highly recommend, if you can, wait till this fall for next season. I'm going to make these seeds available to you. You can buy them on our website. And I think you'll really enjoy them. You're going to get a lot of yield out of this little fruit. Hey, thanks for joining us again on An American Homestead. We're glad you're tuning in each week. Be sure to share this video on Facebook and Twitter and all the social media sites that you hang out on. Share it with your friends and family. There's a lot that's going on around the homestead. I hope you'll tune in every week to see how it's going.
You feel safe enough up there?
Yeah, I wish on this thing,
Yeah?
I wish there was a part of a 2x4 on the other side of this 2x4. You could put two more screws in
Okay.
on both sides. I'm sure it'll hold, but you know. All right, 8 inches.
Yeah.
There's 2x4. You're driving Jamie nuts.
I hear him screaming over there.